soul starts to linger. It's home, I know. If you catch me daydreaming now and forever, thoughts are carrying me along to that place we call home. Down that long road, throughout life we...
The Ottawa Valley has always been recognized for the things that make it unique. The character of the region has been shaped by its history, acquiring a personality that today is somewhere between the old world and the new. Exemplifying this is the village of Chapeau, Quebec. It sits like a hat on a ridge on the north shore of Allumette Island in the upper Ottawa River. We have singled out this small place of a few hundred people for this program because of its role in an ongoing story. It is a story of durability, of adventure, and tradition. It is the story of the valley and its people. The bridge that unites Chapeau village with the rest of Pontiac County is more than a practical conveyance. Historically, it has come to symbolize the tie to the dual life of the village, farming and lumbering. Seasonally, the community shifts between the two economies, the bridge being the route into the hinterland of the Laurentian Shield, the frontier, the bush. Incorporated in 1874, Chapeau is located about 145 kilometers upstream from the nation's capital. It may as well be 1,000, for there exists in this tightly knit community a way of life that certainly is apart. It is rich in the mixed dialects and cultures of Irish, German, Scots, and French, very much down home.
Take a look. Some good shape.
There is an event that takes place at the fairgrounds here that has occurred annually over the past century. It too is symbolic, in that it is a coming together of the land and the forest, where well-groomed horses and their proud owners parade. It is a tradition. The elders of today's generation and their fathers also demonstrated in similar fashion the strength and abilities of their teams. In their time, they were under the watchful eye of the foreman of the timbering operations, hoping to be hired on for the winter season.
Jolly young fellow, Pat Gregg is my name. I come from the Chapeau, that village of fame, for singing and dancing and all sorts of fun. Sure, the boys from the Chapeau, they can't be outdone.
The village, the forest, the people have been captured in this song, written before the turn of the century. It still voices the spirit of this place. Mary Hyon.
Pat Gregg was my father, and he wrote the Chapeau Boys. That he was just an ordinary man, and liked lots of fun and full of jokes. So no wonder I missed him when he was away. Well, I can remember one time of seeing him walking across the bridge. Mother didn't know what happened. I out that door and gone so fast, and onto the bridge to meet my father. My father taught me to dance when I was only 4 years old. I was not able to balance myself. I remember he taught me to hold the back of a chair, and he taught me to step dance and that. And he more particularly wanted me to dance trespass at Scotch reels. So at one time I did quite, but my mother wasn't very much in favor of it. My father was only 21 when he made that song.
While on your patience I beg to intrude, we hired with Fitzgerald as agent for booze to go up on Black River, that's far, far away, to the old Caldwell farm to finish the hay.
Well, there was only one method, and that was walk. There was no other method. Supposing I was fortunate. Well, I guess I walked maybe 24 miles, but even that, it was fortunate because all those camps you had to walk in, supposed it was 40, 50 miles, you still had to walk because there's no other method. These portages, there's no way you could get on the wagon with them because they were loaded with produce, see? Although they would carry your turkey. Now, that's your bag of clothes or whatever you had.
But next morning we left with good wishes and smiles. From there to the Caldwell was 46 miles. North over the mountain, Bob showed us the route. And when we got there, we were nearly played out.
Vern Price remembers the farms, like the old Caldwell, that supplied food for the men and hay for the horses. Teams and wagons by the hundreds traveled in procession, hauling supplies to the upper limits and tributaries of the Ottawa, like the Black, the Collonge, and the Madawaska rivers. Reaching here, the men set up camp. Through the months ahead, wives and sweethearts would write, but the only warmth would come from the box stove, penman's underwear, deer-hide mitts, and their own sense of humor. Voracious appetites had to be satisfied. The better cooks attracted the better men. For some, it meant troubles left behind. For others, it was the only work available. But many went because they liked the life. Their forest home was called a shanty, and they were the shantymen. During the winters at the turn of the century, over 60% of the male workforce in Canada was employed in one facet or another of the forest industry. In villages up and down the valley, like Chapeau, the women were left with the responsibility of raising children, schooling, and keeping the home fires burning through months of loneliness and isolation. They were the unsung heroes. The names listed on the payroll of the agents and jobbers spoke of family origins from faraway places. Bobrovsky, McParland, Pupor, Sullivan. Names preserved in song. Rusty Leach, Loy Gavin, and Brian Adam. Remember them.
Oh, come all you pine fellers, wherever you be, come sit down a while and listen to me. The truth I will tell you, I make no mistakes, of felling the pine up at Little Long Lake, and it's dum-diddle-a-dee-dum-diddle-I-do. There's the big Hunter Blacks and the Cassidy Greys, and a fine team of collars belonging to Hayes, the team of LaBelle to the bays of O'Brien, and a team of McCool on the Portageon line, and it's dum-diddle-a-dee-dum-diddle-I-do. There's the Sullivan brothers and Jimmy Perdue, and old Moe Chapeau and Fiddlin' Pat too. Best bunch of pine fellers that ever was seen, and we cut for Hawkesbury in the township of Sheen, and there's dum-diddle-daddy, dum-diddle-di-do.
Back in the township of Sheen, the family of J.R. Brennan maintains the tradition of the days when horses championed over machinery. Days when the timber limits of the lumber barons, Gillies, McLaughlin, Booth, rang out with the sound of axes and saws, hurling down the pine. The shantymen had their own vocabulary, some of it repeatable. There was the job of the chickadee, the groundhog, the buck beaver, and the bull cook.
Come all you jolly fellows, and I hope you'll take it cool. I'll tell you of a winter I spent working for Joe McCool. He was the damn fine foreman, the truth to you I'll tell. As far as judging loads and roads, there's sure he can't excel.
The lumbermen adopted the crosscut saw in the 1870s. 2 men and a saw could fell twice the timber of 2 axemen. Starting work before the sun cut through the treetops, each gang had 100 logs a day to get out.
Well, the skidding and hauling, the skidding you didn't need the frost for the skidding. The skidding, you see, you followed the log makers. There was most of that time either 5 or 6 man gang. The 2 loggers, they went ahead and felled the trees, and then we had 1 or 2 trail cutters, most of the time just the one, and the teamster who skidded them, and the man at the skidway that rolled them up. You know, as they fell them, this trail cutter or swamp or whatever you like to call him, he made trails first to the logs, removed all the brush so we'd have a good clear trail, and then we'd skid them out to the skidway and the roller, he'd put them up. Now sometimes if the logs was big, we used the line, and the horse drew the logs up.
How are you? Oh, short, eh? Okay.
We started to sleigh haul on Monday morning and 5 the standard time. He sent me out with a Polish gang, we loaded with the line. Lucy Cobrett was sent to tail, he sent the 2 first load. Pat Masterson was chickadee, walked up and down the road. And then comes Christy Tallon, he drove a span of greys. He was one of the best tipsters McCool had on the sleighs. He was followed by young McLaren, Hal Kennedy just as well, till they put the 4th team in the gang, were drove by Stevie Bell.
Teeing up at the skidway meant a chance to swap stories and mix with other gangs.
You see, to the same teamster to each gang. You see, like up in McCool's there, I guess at Willie's camp, maybe he had 20 gangs, eh? Yeah, everybody worked together and everybody was pleased together. Big day then. There generally was a small team around camp that used to bring the chuck out hot on sleighs. Sunday was your day off, so you either washed or wrote letters home, but you still had to look after your horses. You done your wash and stepped down and sung.
We are a big family, we dance and we sing. We live just as happy as an emperor or king. We're 7 fine fiddlers and none of us drones. And Michael, my brother, can rattle the bones.
You were there for one reason, because you needed the money and were glad to get it.
Oh, I worked for McCool first. I worked in the cookery, 6 months, 120 men, 1 cook and 2 cookies, $26 a month. Paid me 30, but I took the run. We went in the first day of November. The first year I went in the cookery, and we come out the 8th day of May. We went down over the mountain here to brought the horses down to the farm. I was 6 months and 8 days, and I'd earned, they paid me $40 the last 2 months I was there, and they paid me 30 for the first 4. And 8 days in May, I earned $208. Never missed a day's work from I left home till I got back. See, every company had to stamp their logs, eh? So they can be seen in the waters, eh? And this was a job the lads didn't like very well, because your day's work was done, and then you had to go and stamp on your logs. But you didn't get any extra money for it. You had to at least put 5 or 6 marks on every corner right around, so they could be seen in the waters, eh? No matter how your log was lying, eh? Yeah, well, every company used to have a mark for their logs, eh? But Booths didn't have one at this time, they said, eh? So they were walking along the shore one day, and they saw a turtle on their logs at the river, eh? So Mrs. Booth is supposed to have said to her husband, that would be a nice mark for our logs, the turtle, eh? So some of the guys, when they were making that turtle, they got in a hurry, eh? And they didn't leave no tail or head on it, eh? So the foreman said something to the guy about not making it right. He said there's no head or no tail on it. And it seems it was a very stormy day, eh? So the guy said to the foreman, he said, you wouldn't expect the turtle to have his head and tail out a day like today, would you?
And now to conclude and finish, and I hope there's no one mad to hear about McCool's Grand Cruise. The people should be glad. So get your work done early when the weather it turns cool. We'll shoulder our pack sack and we'll go back for McCool. That's right, lady. We made that, we composed that one Saturday night.
By mid-March, winter was releasing her grip. Soon the rivers would bring down the timber and the men. Bernie Bador.
Well, we're coming around to the time of year when the lad would step out of the shanty in the morning and he could feel her in the air, you know, that pretty soon the old ice was going to go thump and she'd crack. And the foreman would come around and say, well, you lads get ready to break that dam and we'll let her go in the morning. Once they started downriver, those fellas had to herd them just like the western cowboys herded a herd of cattle. And they kept them off the shore, and wherever they didn't have glance booms, the logs would get into these little side bays, and then that meant they had to go in and clean them out. And that wasn't, you know, a job that they relished too much, because they'd have to get into that cold water A lot of these fellas who worked in the drive, you know, they were valley lads who went up, farmers, and the lads from Glengarry come up and went up. But there were a lot of French lads from the Gaspé, too. And when they come down in the big pointer boats, you know, when they were working along the shore and with the peavies and their pike poles, one of their favorite songs was En roulant, ma boule roulant, en roulant, ma boule. Trois beaux canards s'en vont maintenant, roudi roulant, ma boule roulant, en roulant, ma boule roulant, en roulant, ma boule. There's always a poet along there to make a song up about how a jam was broken or how fellas died and how they were buried. And they used to simply pick them up, they'd roll them in a blanket, bury them in the sand, and the poplar tree was soft, and they'd cut it and make a cross out of it and hang their cork boots on that to mark the grave there in the sand. There were many, many of those graves down the Ottawa River.
When at last the drive was over, it meant booming up the logs, preparing them for market, and a little celebration.
When they come off their spring drive, they'd come into our place in the bar, and some of the lads would come over to my mother and I'd say, here's my winter's pay. Now, I'm going to take $10 out of that, and when I come back and I want more, and I will, don't give it to me.
Now I'll buy me some poaching and a wash tub of beer. I'll have me a scrubbing, the first one this year. I'll get rid of my scooters and the smell of the pine, and dance with the honeys and blow me last dime. And it's dum-diddle-eddy, dum-diddle.
Get rid of the smell of pine, dance with the honeys, and blow me last dime. For a lot of them, that indeed was the case. For others, it meant some money to plant a new crop for the year. For practically all of them, though, the big spring blowout was an adieu, a farewell, until they met again in the fall at these same fairgrounds to sign on for one more time.
It'll always be home, home to me. To that place we call home. Down that long road, throughout life we roam. Whenever I go to that place I know it'll always be